What's up? And today, we're back on schedule finally with the History of Kamen Rider, Episode 4. Today, we are covering Skyrider and Kamen Rider Super-1. We are officially beginning the Showa era, Phase 2, or as I like to call it, running into the 80s, aka the early 1980s. So, let's begin with a good old recap. Previously on the History of Kamen Rider, the series entered a bumpy part of its history because NET no longer wanted anything to do with the franchise. Even worse, Kamen Rider X was cancelled, only lasting 35 episodes out of a planned 50. The original plan was to have X air on NET, and then the next show air on TBS. However, with X's cancellation, a new show had to be created. In came Kamen Rider Amazon. Unlike the elegant and technologically advanced X Rider, this Amazon Rider was primitive, beastly, and wild. Or at least for the first arc. So the show ran for 24 episodes and didn't really do that good. And Kamen Rider officially went to TBS in 1975. The first installment to air on TBS was Kamen Rider Stronger, which, like X, had its episode count shortened from 52 to 39. And after a bunch of failed attempts to boost the show's ratings, it was finally decided to put Kamen Rider to a close. After which, Toei, MBS, and Shotaro Ishinomori began working on other projects. In particular, Space Iron Man Kyodyne and Iron Man number 17. What would happen next? Find out today. As Ishinomori was working on Iron Man number 17, Space Battleship Yamato, an anime from 1974, released a movie in 1977, which triggered an anime and tokusatsu renaissance. And also, it's because of this movie and Space Battleship Yamato in general that we get the term anime, as prior to then, anime was called TV manga. However, the themes and deep storytelling of Yamato were rarely seen up to that point. Sure, there was the Gekiga movement, which existed since the early 70s, but Yamato expected audiences to watch each and every episode. Okay, I'm getting a little sidetracked. Science fiction, tokusatsu, and anime benefited especially well from this, and it caused a rising popularity in Kamen Rider reruns, mainly from the younger viewers. This eventually came into a head when in September 1978, Toru Hirayama and MBS got to work on a new show. For ideas, Hirayama intended meetings of the Kamen Rider fan club. The initial broadcast start of April 1979 was lost due to failing to get a good time slot. However, due to strong publishing trends in the Korakuen show of that new year attracting double the usual visitors, the series production continued until starting in October of that year. It focuses on Hiroshi Tsukuba, a student at Johoku University, as he encounters Neo Shocker, a revival of the original Shocker organization. One member, Dr. Keitaro Shido, was unable to bear the guilt of the organization's methods and ran away. Hiroshi hid the doctor, but the members of the hang gliding club he hanged out with were killed by the monster Gamelion, who also had Keitaro turn Hiroshi into a cyborg. And Keitaro gave him the name Kamen Rider, after which Hiroshi decided to use his powers to protect humanity from Neo Shocker. The show started out as basically a remake of the original show, but Hiroshi Tsukuba was given the ability to fly due to the Tosu ECG system, which is a kinesthetic technology developed by NASA that converts video signals into film. This allowed an infinite amount of pictures to be placed on a frame. So basically visual effects before visual effects. Because this was for Japanese TV shows, video material had to be sent all the way to LA to be converted into film images until 1985. Another aspect of Skyrider was that he had the ability to have his motorcycle break through walls with the rider brake technique. Ratings were an average 13.2% in Kanto and 14.2% in Kansai, due to the dull storyline and weak main character. We're talking a weak personality. Even worse, due to the subpar flying effects, the sailing jump gradually fell out of use. So many attempts were taken to improve the show, like a new executive for Neo Shocker, a cafe for new characters, and most importantly, guest appearances of previous riders. That became the new motif for the show. There was even supposed to be a second rider called V9. With the popularity of the previous riders, V9 was saved for the next installment. He was supposed to debut in Skyrider's film, 8 Riders vs. the Galaxy King. Skyrider's costume was also upgraded by Seiji Abe, a producer of Kamen Rider. It was to give him a bright, fun, and simple hero image. This form debuted in Vs. Galaxy King, before it fully debuted in episode 28. Masaru Igami was also replaced by Takeshi Edzure, who was not a fan of Kamen Rider. Edzure focused on conveying that humans can overcome enemies by training their bodies to the limit. He even wanted romantic images but was shut down. Luckily, because of those changes, ratings peaked at episode 30 with 18.2%, and Skyrider ended up with 54 episodes, making it the second longest show in the franchise. It's supposed to go on for even longer, but due to Murakami's schedule, it was cut short. You're probably wondering, what was V9 supposed to do? Well, there were many directions for him, like replacing him and assisting him, like Rider number 2 assisted number 1, or just be a movie original character. One thing that stuck was that while Skyrider symbolized the sky, V9 was to symbolize space, and was said to be an astronaut from NASA. And as Skyrider's second half was being worked on, 3 new elements were added to V9: aggressiveness, kung fu, and 5 gloves with special abilities. And that ultimately fused into Kamen Rider Super-1, focusing on Kazuya Oki, who volunteered to undergo a remodeling operation and become Super-1, a cyborg designed for planetary development, and to work with the research staff and construction staff on NASA's S1 base, hence the name. However, the small nation of Dogma, led by Emperor Terra Macro, learned of Super-1's existence and demanded that he be handed over to them. When Dr. Henry, the guy who modified Super-1, refused, he was killed alongside all the NASA staff by Dogma forces. The reason Kazuya survived was because he accidentally transformed without a computer. In order to learn how, he returns to Japan and hides himself in the Sekishin Temple, where he trained under Master Genkai. 6 months later, Kazuya finally learns the secret of transformation through 100 people jumping him, and he is given the name Kamen Rider Super-1 by Genjiro Tani, who helped Skyrider. The name Super-1 means Kamen Rider 1 in the 1980s. Production really began in July of 1980. and the role of Super-1 went to Shunsuke Takasugi. Other finalists include Shigeki Ishii, who would play Goggle Blue in Goggle 5, and Shun Sugata, whom we'll talk about next time. Children took to the show because of its cool design and action, and the reception was so well that a feature film was made for the spring of 1981, featuring the 8 other riders, who were presumed dead at the end of Skyrider. Personally, I also really like the show, or at least the first 3 episodes, since those are the episodes I watched, so my opinions might change. The popularity of this show was close to the most popular series so far, Kamen Rider V3. Average ratings reflected this, as they reached past Skyriders, with the Kanto region having 13.3%, and Kansai having 19.58%. But that won't last, because in order to coincide with TBS's program restructuring, the show was rescheduled to Saturday at 5 p.m. in Kansai and 7 p.m. As a result, the show's content was changed, with Genkai and Benkei being killed at the hands of Terra Macro, the Junior Rider Squad being introduced, and new, more comical villains in the form of Jin Dogma. While viewership didn't exactly plummet, areas like Hokkaido saw the show cancelled. These changes, unlike Skyriders, saw the end of Kamen Rider's second run on TV. Lightning only struck once for Toei this time. When Takasugi talked with some fans from those areas, these fans thought the show ended at episode 23 with the defeat of Terra Macro and his Dogma Kingdom. Average ratings fell to 9.9% as another result, the lowest in the franchise's history. So, Kamen Rider once again ended after the airing of Super-1's final episode. Whew. When I get to review these shows, I will talk about details I didn't cover in this slideshow. So, what to do next time? Well, next time will be rather interesting, as we're gonna talk about the strange mess that is Kamen Rider Zekros. So, get excited because we are about to go on a ride. And also prepare to get a bit frustrated with the developments. So, in the meantime, later fools.